Welcome to the amazing world of dual processing by Emma Holtzman. Have you ever looked at someone who is typing and wondered, how can he write without looking at the keyboard? Well, this is an example of dual processing. How this is an example of dual processing is something that we will get into later. For now, you may be wondering, what is dual processing? Well, I am here to help. By definition, dual processing is the principle that information is often simultaneously processed on separate conscious and unconscious tracks. In simpler terms, it is when unconscious processing, System 1, and conscious processing, System 2, occurs on parallel tracks. Dual processing was originated by William James in the 1980s and was popularized by Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow. System 1 is the unconscious system. It is very fast, automatic, and involuntary. It can make split-second decisions without reasoning or analysis. It executes tasks from experience stored in long-term memory. Also, an example would be if we are hungry, we automatically know to eat. System 2 is the conscious system. It is slow, deliberate, and voluntary. It uses logic and reasoning for the best possible outcome. An example would be, when asked what we want to eat, we must think to decide. As you can see by the colorful picture on the bottom, pictured in red, System 1 activates the parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes, as these areas have to do with perception, hearing, and visual processing. And System 2, pictured in blue, activates the frontal and parietal lobes, as these have to do with judgment and perception. Now, I will be talking about experimental applications. In a study by Marlene Abadier and Laurent Warauquier, the question of the benefits of conscious and unconscious thought and decision-making was studied. They concluded that when it comes to complex decisions, it is always better to think consciously. But what's the relevance? This reveals that complex topics are often thought about with System 2 processing, as these complex topics and questions receive better results when being thought about slowly by using logic and reasoning. Now it is time for some fun situational examples. This is Sally. Sally is a dancer. As a dancer, it is important to always have perfect technique with your toes pointed and your legs straight. When performing, Sally consistently, consciously thinks about keeping her technique while dancing. This makes Sally's conscious technique a perfect example of System 2 in the dual processing systems, as she is actively conscious of her technique while dancing. This is Tommy. Tommy went to Halloween Horror Nights this year. When walking through a scare zone, Tommy was jump scared by a clown. In a quick unconscious action, Tommy screamed and ran away. The clown registered in his brain as danger and fear, and in an absolute instant with no thought involved, Tommy screamed and ran away. His unconscious response to fear makes this a perfect example of System 1 in the dual processing systems. Here is a new question to consider. Could System 2 ever become System 1? And the answer is yes. Yes, it can, and here is how. Think about muscle memory. Over time, repetition of some conscious behaviors can become unconscious due to muscle memory. This leads us back to our original question. How come he can type without looking at the keyboard? Tommy is able to do this because over time the repetition of consciously looking at the keys to locate the letter has become like muscle memory for him. Now, Tommy is able to unconsciously type the letters that he wants without looking at the keyboard because his brain knows the location of each letter. To recap, dual processing is when unconscious processing System 1 and conscious processing System 2 occurs on parallel tracks. Thank you so much for watching, and here are my citations part 1. And here is part 2.